But we need nitrogen, 5%, 6%, about 5-6% of nitrogen we need after harvesting. But we need nitrogen, it's more important too, in order to get protein. Because in our dairy diet, we need food energy, sugar, carbohydrate, and so on, but we need also protein in order to renew our protein of the human body. We have to eat protein every day in order to renew the proteins, those of our cells, our tissues of our human body. We need protein. But protein, what is it? It's carbohydrates in which we incorporate nitrogen. We combine carbohydrate with nitrogen in order to manufacture protein. Protein, nitrogens, we incorporate in carbohydrates in order to manufacture protein. Nitrogen comes from the air. 79% of nitrogen in the air. No shortage announced of nitrogen. So, not only we'll do a maximum use of carbon dioxide, of solar energy, but we have to use, to do the very big use of nitrogen, other elements free of charge. Nitrogen is in the air, free of charge. But the problem is, in order to manufacture protein incorporating nitrogen into carbohydrates, we need energy. The physical process is, the cost is energy for this biological process. So, in order to produce protein via crops, there is two means of and a shortage of nitrogen, of course, in the air is not expected for millennia. No. Incorporating nitrogen into carbohydrates to make protein requires a lot of energy. There is two means in order to get that. The first one, well, we want way rich in protein. So we'll fertilize soils with synthetic fertilizer, urea, nitrate of ammonium, sulfate of ammonium, and so on. But we know that these synthetic fertilizers require fossil fuels. That means a cost, very high cost of fossil fuels, and this spraying these synthetic fertilizers causes emission of the nitrous oxide, the oxide of nitrous, and we say that it's a very potent greenhouse gas. So, using synthetic fertilizers is a technique of the past. It's a mistake of the past. The new agriculture, the modern agriculture, the future agriculture, in order to get sustainable food system with agricultural sustainable development, will abandon this kind of techniques. Is there other means? Yes, of course. Leguminous crops. Leguminous crops, such lablab, such mucuna, such pigeon peas, such cowpeas, such many plants of leguminous are able, microbes help leguminous to extract the nitrogen of air. These microbes use the carbohydrates of the crop. With this energy, they are able to extract nitrogen, manufacture the proteins and restitute, give this protein to the crop. We know that. And everybody, every in the world knows the role of leguminous in order to manufacture protein. Leguminous crops such as lab, pigeon peas, have special microbes, special bacteria able to take nitrogen out of the air and can supply the soil with nitrogen. After harvesting leguminous crop, of the leguminous crop, there is nitrogen residues. And these nitrogen residues can fertilize the crop, the following crop in the crop rotation. Leguminous help us to get protein and to fertilize soils in nitrogen by biological process, not using nitrogen, synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, not emitting gas, greenhouse gas, very little greenhouse gas. So we have, I think, the new farming system will associate cereal, tubers, and leguminous in the same plot. Why not? And after harvesting, the microbe can get carbon from cereals or tubers, can get nitrogen from leguminous roots, and manufacture humus in the soil. And by doing this, of course, the soil remains more fertile. We lengthen the transpiration, we lengthen the photosynthesis, and so on. So the idea is to associate leguminous in the association of crop in the same plot. It seems to be very, not only it seems to be very effective, it's very effective in almost every country. Now, leguminous synthesize protein from the nitrogen in the air through the microbe, the root hairs, these microbes, rhizobium, we say rhizobium, and their post-harvest residues are full of nitrogen and can contribute to fertilize croplands that follow legumes in crop rotation. So it seems to be more adequate techniques than synthetic nitrogen fertilizers. This will avoid use to synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, a powerful greenhouse gas, and very, very expensive. So we can implement farming systems which do the maximum use of carbon dioxide, sunlight, air nitrogen, free of charge. That means it doesn't cost a lot. It doesn't cost a lot. Why not? Have to speed up? Okay, thank you. So, mineral fertilization, it's true that we need to look for mineral elements, calcium, phosphorus, and so on, released by the bedrock weathering in the basement underground. It's possible. The main problem is phosphorus. We see the perspective of shortage of natural phosphate in the phosphate mine. So we have to look for other phosphorus in other sites. Where? In the parent rock, the bedrock. The weathering of the parent rock release mineral elements every day. But the roots of wheat, the roots of pigeon peas, cannot reach the bedrock. But deep roots of trees can reach the bedrock and absorb the mineral elements released when the weathering of the parent rock. So maybe the modern farming system will incorporate trees with deep roots in the cropping system. So, falling leaves then, the mineral elements go up with the sap, enter the leaves, and when leaves fall down, of course, we can fertilize soils with minerals. No problem. And mycorrhizal fungi, useful fungi, mycorrhizal fungi that incorporate in the roots of trees, or also in roots on a lot of annual crops. And these mineral fungi, with the energy, with the carbohydrates of the photosynthesis, produce mycelium able to extract mineral elements from clay of the tepaloid, of the top layer, and also from the subsoil minerals released when parent rock when the weathering of the parent rock. So these useful fungi become embedded in the root of the plants, thrive on carbohydrates photosynthesized by the plants, and develop a very fine mycelium. But after that, it allows to extract mineral elements from clay that the plants were able to absorb, and after that, return these mineral elements to the plant from which they had obtained carbohydrates. So now we know new techniques able to produce higher yield per hectare. This means decreasing the cost because we are able to do a maximum use of natural resources, renewable, and so on. This is how they manage to help us to extract phosphorus from clay. The problem is resolved. So we have to promote this kind of techniques, of course. Maybe the problem. Well, we are in semi-arid regions in Niger. We can see this sorghum. We can compare with this one. And you see this tree with deep roots is able to follow photosynthesis. In the dry season, he reaches the deep water, he follows sweating and photosynthesis during the dry season. And after that, at the beginning of the rainy season, the leaf falls down. This tree is a leguminous tree. That means microbes help this tree to extract nitrogen, and the leaf is rich in carbon, photosynthesis. The leaf is rich in nitrogen. Leaves fall down and fertilize soil with a good ratio carbon and nitrogen. It helps soil to produce humus, so we can increase the humus level. Humus holds water. It's good in semi-arid region, and so on. We can, of course, it's obvious, we can increase the sorghum yield per hectare with no cost, with no monetary cost. Why not? It's better. If we have to avoid desertification in many countries of Africa, yes, this kind of Federvia albida, this leguminous, can help a lot. And in some cases, we can say it's agroforestry. In the dry season, it seems a forest. Of course, in the rainy season, leaves had fallen. So, but we can grow annual crops in the rainy season and follow the photosynthesis of in the dry season. Control of pests and pathogens. Well, we know disease-bearing agents, pathogens such as bacteria, fungi, weed, should no longer be eradicated. I should not be longer eradicate. Yes. Now, in order to avoid biodiversity losses, we had to avoid pesticides. We had to avoid, we have obvious synthetic pesticides. Of course, biopesticides, it's better than synthetic pesticides. But the idea is to avoid all forms of pesticides. We want not to eradicate, we want to preserve the biodiversity, the natural biodiversity and the domestic biodiversity. So we have to reduce the proliferation and damage of these pests and disease. The idea is not to eradicate them, but to avoid excessive proliferation, excessive damages. That means to avoid pests, well, resistant or tolerant crops. But that seems maybe farmer seeds, not high-yield varieties. Of course, the high-yield varieties, green revolution, are very sensitive to pests and disease. So we have to avoid that. Tolerant crop, resistant crop varieties should be grown. To prevent pests and disease, one control measure can be spraying auxiliary insects. That means predators of harmful insects. That means high biodiversity, of course. Another measure in order to prevent pests and disease, we can grow many different crops in rotational cropping system and in crop association. We saw that combining different species in the same plot, we can ensure a maximum cover crop. We can ensure production of humus. We can also avoid the proliferation of the pathogenic agents and the pest and disease. It's possible. Because it's very difficult from a harmful insect. It can cause damage in this species, in this crop, but in order to reach another plant of the same species, he has to be transported in other species not very adequate for this kind of harmful insect. So we can limit the proliferation of harmful insects, of pest, disease, and weeds. By associating different crops in the same plot, we can avoid high dissemination of pathogen fungi. In spite of winds, it's very difficult for the fungi to disseminate because too many species and many different species with which are not host of these pathogenic fungi. By no longer spreading insecticide and fungicide, auxiliary insects and mycorrhizal fungi are preserved. Very important to preserve mycorrhizal fungi in soil. Very, very important, very useful in order to fertilize the soil with the mineral elements of the soil. By no longer using pesticides, we preserve biodiversity and increase the sanitary quality of food, of course. It was our goal, and that is a conclusion. There is no lack of technical alternative to properly and sustainably feed the whole humanity. Technical problem. Maybe crop associations, we are in Haiti, other crop association with cereal, leguminous, with tubers, but no sunlight always fall down green leaves, not sunlight cannot fall on ground. Association of beans and bananas, it seems permaculture in France. More than 10 species, different species in the same plot. It's very useful in order to avoid the fungicides and so on. Agroforestry in India, in Kerala, 300 inhabitants per square kilometers. All the trees are useful. All the trees here are useful. And above these trees, of course, annual crops like ginger, ginseng, and so on. Ducks in rice fields in Vietnam in order to peck weeds, in order to peck harmful insects in Vietnam. And, well, we're introducing the same method in France. That means in production, we take lessons from South country, Vietnam, in order to avoid herbicides and pesticides. Very useful ducks in rice fields. Well, this animal is different. With solar energy, it cuts the grass, but it doesn't eradicate the weed. So the weed cover help avoiding rainwater dripping. But we tried, this grass doesn't have to disseminate excessive dissemination, but it cut, and so it doesn't get flowers and grains. Well, in China, 2 different varieties in the same plot of land in order to avoid fungi dissemination. Azolapinatides mean in order to fertilize with nitrogen by biological way in rice fields in Vietnam. Stable, we say, on the roof in Mali. Drying beans, sure that the new we can promote methods in order to avoid post-harvesting drying beans, and maybe always harvesting rainwater in order to be able to get a small irrigation. But no, this implement doesn't require fossil energy. No problem for irrigation. So we know that exists, already. We know new technologies able to properly and sustainably feed from the past. Now, we have to secure access to agricultural land, because agroforestry need secure access to the fruits of the trees. So in some countries, in some region, we have to modify the law with access to land. Farmers with sufficient income, decent income, we said, with sufficient income to cover family needs and agricultural investment, of course. Protection of domestic market. Farmers with only manual tools cannot compete, can Brazilian soja, French wheat, and so on. No, cannot compete. So I think many countries need protection of its own domestic markets. Social and democratic management of water, of course, and other common goods, access to various forms of credit on household consumption and farm investment. It's not a technical problem. It seems to be political, but political for the general interest, of course, problem. Now, thank you very much for attention.
Thank you, Professor Mark Dufmia, for the impressive presentation. I couldn't see anyone dozing here, sleeping. Everyone was attentive, and I hope also those who were following the presentation digitally were also busy listening. Professor Dufmia took us through the whole presentation from the definition of agroecology, the last experience about industrial agriculture, and deeply he engaged us in the agroecology technologies and informed us that poverty is not caused by lack of food, but actually because of inequality in income. So we need to engage in agroecology in order to curb inequality of income. Now we'll have a round of question and answer session. So if we have questions, we'll take up, the first round will take up 3 to 4 questions. Yeah, so we'll take up 4 questions, and these questions will be answered, and if we still have time, we'll take another round of 3 to 4 questions. So if I may get assistance for someone to move around with a microphone so that we get the questions. Karibuni kwa maswali.
Thank you very much for the presentation.